Final Cut Pro for the iPad is finally here, and it's even better than I expected. So in this video, we're going to walk through the application and show you how to get the most out of it. So first, a couple of prerequisites. So this requires the M1 iPad or newer. So all the iPad Pros with the M1 chip or newer, along with the iPad Air 5th generation. Now, also, we do have a subscription fee for Final Cut Pro. So it's $5 a month or $50 a year, and you do get a 1 month free trial. And once you've subscribed, this is going to be the interface you are greeted with. So we're gonna start a new project here, and you can see you do get your project name. You also get the timeline setting. So if you want the format to automatically adjust based on the first clip that you import, you can do that. Or of course, you do have your custom options in here as well, where you can choose your resolution, your orientation, your color space, if it's SDR or HDR, along with your frame rate. I'm gonna set mine to automatic. That way it automatically adjusts based on the first clip that I add to the project. So we're going to continue, and now we're going to go ahead and import from photos. But if you don't have it in your camera roll, you could also import from the files application, which you can use an SSD or hard drive for, by the way. You just can't run projects off of an SSD or hard drive. You could also record with your camera, or you can start blank on a fresh canvas. So I'm going to import from photos. And before we get into all the details of like cutting this up and adding effects, let's first get familiar with the interface that we're working with here. So let's start from the bottom. So on the bottom, we do have our inspect right here. So if you go ahead and tap on our clip, we do have the inspect window right here where we can see the clip speed, the opacity, the blend mode, our color conversion. So if you want to choose a color conversion, like if you have an HDR video and you want to convert it to SDR, you can do that right there. And then if we go over to the next tab, it is crop and transform. So we can transform our frame right here, our video. This is also where you fit and fill. So we have scale to fill and scale to fit. But of course, since I had my dimensions set up automatically when I imported this clip, I don't have to mess with that, but you can. You also have your rotation, your anchor point. And if you go to crop tools right here, you have auto crop, which is pretty cool. And let me actually show you how that works real quick. So I'm going to import a photo that has a different aspect ratio. Okay, so I imported this TikTok right here, which has a different aspect ratio, and we're gonna tap and hold and bring that into our timeline here. We're gonna put it in front, and now we should be able to auto crop. So we're gonna go again to crop tools and then auto crop, and now we can start the scan. So it's going to scan and analyze the clips to automatically keep your subject in the frame. So our subject here is this iPhone, and we're just gonna go ahead and auto crop this. So we're gonna start scan, and it's going to automatically analyze the clip, and it's going to basically try to put the subject in the frame of the aspect ratio that we have, with the rest of the video. So now if we go ahead and play, you can see, let me go ahead and mute this actually. We're gonna go to volume down here. We're gonna mute this clip so I can play this. So now if we play, you will see that it crops to what it thinks the subject of the video is. And it actually works really well. And of course, this is not a great example, but you can kind of see how it works. And you can see all the dimensions and everything moving in real time over here, which is pretty neat. And then also in the inspect window over here, we have our audio. So if you want to change the audio offset, the pan, fade in, fade out. We also have a new feature here for voice isolation. So voice isolation is kind of like what we have on the iPhone. So this is going to use machine learning to really bring out your voice and kind of reduce background noises. But you also have loudness and noise removal as well. And actually, let's go ahead and test that. And let me see if that works. And yeah, it seems like it's actually working pretty well. Now, you will probably also want to use noise removal along with that to reduce any other external noise, maybe like the air conditioner or background cars or something like that. So you can do all that right there. And you also have an adjustable wheel right here. We can change the amount of the enhancements. We also have audio effects. So if you tap on the plus right there, you can add a compressor or a single band EQ. So if I go ahead and add a compressor, you can see we can go into that, and you can change all of these with the audio in there, which is pretty awesome. And what I also really like about the interface here on the iPad is that we can easily disable each effect that we add. So up here in the top left of the inspector, you can see disable right there. So it's easy to disable certain enhancements and kind of, if you have titles and things like that as well, it's easy to enable and disable them right there or reset back to their default values. And then the final tab over here is the effects tab. So this one is pretty neat as well. So if we tap on the plus right here, you can see we have masks and keying. So you can add masks. You have your color adjustments, you have your blur, distort, and stylize, which we'll get to stylize in a minute. But if we want to mask something, we can do a corner mask, a shape mask, a green screen link here, or a scene removal mask. Now the scene removal is a new feature. This is like what we have on the iPhone where you're able to, just remove a subject from a background. So we're going to try this out. This is not a great background for that at all, but if we do it, you can see it will cut our subject out throughout the whole video. So we're going to turn this volume down, which we have this little wheel over here for that. And you can see how it kind of just shows my silhouette there and pulls it from the background. It's not the best, but it's pretty cool that you could just do that with a tap of a button there. And once you add that, you do have some other options to configure here as well, like a reference. So you can reference a different part of the video, a different frame in that video, which is nice. Now, if you want to disable it, it's really easy. Just do so right there. So let's go back and let's add another effect. So you have color adjustments, which is going to be your color correction. So you have your exposure, your contrast, your brightness. You have all of this that you can change right here, which is nice. And then we have our other basic effects like our blurs, our distortions, and our stylize, which is adding like vignettes and things like that. So we've got to stylize here, vignette, pixelate, or add noise. And one key thing here is that you can copy and paste effects throughout your timeline. So if you go to these three dots right here, you can copy these effects and apply them to other clips throughout your timeline, which I found to be very key. I do also like how you can change the clip speed to be a very exact amount, whereas on the desktop version of Final Cut Pro, it's kind of sophisticated the way that you change clip speeds, like it goes based off of a percentage. This has this little wheel right here, which I think just makes it more intuitive and easier to use. Oh, and by the way, this is also where you add your freeze frame. So if you want a freeze frame, it's in this section right here as well. So we're going to go ahead and reset these options back to default. So you're probably going to use the inspect window quite a bit when you are using Final Cut Pro on the iPad, especially the effects tab over here on the right hand side. So for now, we're going to go ahead and close out of that and go back to our main little interface here. Now, I would recommend that if you don't have an Apple Pencil, or even if you do have an Apple Pencil, the Jog Wheel is extremely useful. So that's this button right here up in the far top right next to the three dots. If you tap on that, it will open up the Jog Wheel, which you can see down in the bottom right now of our timeline. And what's awesome about this is if you tap on that, it will go ahead and open this up. And this is great for precision editing. So you can see how slow it moves right here and allows you to be really precise with your cuts and where you add in effects and things like that. So this is awesome to have. And going back to the keyboard shortcuts, if you hold on the command key, you will see all of your different shortcuts that you have here for Final Cut Pro on the iPad. And most of them are very similar or exactly the same as you get on desktop, which makes it really easy to go from one to the other seamlessly. I found that pretty much every single shortcut that I've used on my computer, I'm able to use here on the iPad. So also down in the bottom left corner, we have the Animate button right there. So if you tap on that, you get to choose the format and you can see all of the different color adjustments, the scene removal mask, all of that right here. So you can get a kind of a quick shortcut into all of the effects and animations you have for that clip. And then a big feature that a lot of people are going to love is Multicam. So Multicam is awesome on the iPad. Now, I don't use Multicam very often, but the interface here is great if you do. So you can move the playhead over a Multicam clip in the timeline to view and switch angles, and you can choose up to 4 different angles. And if you tap on new Multicam in the top left right here, you can see you can choose new Multicam clip and you can select up to 4 clips for 4 different angles. And moving on over to the right, you can see we have our delete button, which is going to delete clips. This is all clip based. So you can see we have our selection right here. This little check mark is the selection. And then we have this right here, which is to blade. So you can see we have a blade right there. And if you want to undo at any time, up in the top right is a little undo button. I use that quite a bit. You could also do Command Z, of course, if you have a magic keyboard. Let's go ahead and select our clip again. And we have our other tools right here to clip and delete, or blade and delete at the playhead or after the playhead. Above that, we have options, and from here you can see timeline options. So we have behaviors like snapping, position, show controls in the timeline. We can also choose to have audio scrubbing and skim at the playhead right there. We also have appearance, so you can change the clip height, and if you want to have audio meters, which is kind of over here in the bottom right hand corner, you can turn that off if you would like to. So if you want to turn that off, let's go over here and turn off audio meters. Oh, and by the way, also right here underneath of our preview, we have this little square with the 3 dots in the bottom right. If you tap on that, you will get a picture-in-picture option for the viewer. And if you tap on that, you can see the picture-in-picture, which you can drag around, which is pretty neat. So if we take this and drag it around, you have to pull it from the top. You can drag it around to pretty much anywhere on the Final Cut Pro interface, any of the corners, which is pretty neat. I actually really like this addition here. So if you tap on that again, you can exit picture in picture, and you have your other options in here like full screen. You have your viewer background, so that changes the background. If I were to move this up right here, we can change the background from black to something maybe like white or a checkerboard, and that'll basically just show you, how to frame your clip, and you can see it snaps back into place. We also have guides, so if you wanted to turn on guides, or if you wanted to turn on or off the snap to edges. You also have your safe area and your center and horizon lines right there. Then we also have our video scope here as well. So if you want to see your waveforms, your vector scopes, all of that for like color grading, you can do that right there as well. Right next to options, we have our snapping. So you can turn snapping on or off. And then we also have position where you can turn that on or off right there. Now we're going to go ahead and close out of our media tab. So we're going to go out of that and then go into the one beside that, which is going to be our effects, our transitions, our titles, objects. All of that is going to be right here. So you can see a lot of these are preloaded. Now you will need to download these when you first download the application. You can see we have the little iCloud download icon next to them. So you will need to download these, but it's very easy. It doesn't take up much space at all. So this is where you can do, color adjustments. So if I take this color adjustment here and drag it over top of my timeline, or actually onto the clip. So if you take this and drag it onto the clip, just like you do on the computer, it will apply that right there. So if you want to see, how to change that, go to inspect over here, and we're going to see our different effects that we have. So let's go over to effects, color adjustments, and you can see this is where our color adjustments will be right there that we just added. And if you add, another one, let's say vibrancy, if we add that onto there as well, if we go back to our color adjustments, it will populate right here in our inspector window. We also have transitions. So the transitions on here are pretty basic, but we don't have third-party support for effects just yet. That is coming. It basically was confirmed that we are going to get motion VFX effects coming soon, but for now you're just going to have to use the basic ones that are in here by default, which they're not bad, but they're just nothing super sophisticated. So if we add like this geometric one right here, you can see that it says shorten clips to add transition. So I guess it was too short of a clip to add the transition, but let's go and see how that looks. Let's play. And there's our little geometric transition with me looking awkwardly into the distance. We have titles here as well. So again, these are going to be more basic titles, but some of these are actually pretty cool and pretty professional looking. So if we want to add like this bumper text right here, we can add that right on top of our clip. And I'm going to mute this clip again real quick. So we're going to go ahead over here to volume and turn that down. And let's play and see what that title looks like. So that is what it looks like, maybe like an intro title, and you can change that by simply tapping on the text, and you will see all of your options here, your fonts, your sizes. And again, I really like how intuitive this interface is, especially when it comes to sizing things. I feel like this is easier than it is on a desktop to size things. It just makes it, I don't know, it's just more visually appealing and easier to change the size. You have your color, all caps, you can turn that on or off right there as well. You can see the alignment, pretty much anything you would want when adjusting a text-based title on your Final Cut Pro timeline. So if we go to backgrounds here, you also have quite a few backgrounds, and some of these are pretty nice. So you have like the dashed spheres, which is one of my favorites. If I put this maybe underneath that title, so let's go ahead and put this right here. We're going to try to move this underneath, and let's actually just move the text above it. That was kind of hard to do. So let's move the text above it. There we go. So now you can see let's maybe try to remove the background colors from this title. So let's go ahead and do background off. And there we go. So now we have the background off, and we have the background that we just added with that text over top of it, just like so. So you're starting to kind of see how this is really powerful, and you really have everything you would want. And what I love most about this so far is that there's really no load times. Like everything is just happening instantaneously, which really just shows the insane power of Final Cut Pro on the iPad, and really unleashes the Pro in iPad Pro, which sounds cliche, but it's really true. So anyway, over here, we also have objects. So if you wanted to add a thumbs up, a play button, you can see like a YouTube play is here, which is pretty neat. So if we go ahead and tap on play and drag this over, I wish it was easier to drag things. You do have to hold on it for a second, before you can drag it onto the timeline. But you can see we do have our play right there. And what's also cool is that you could just move this straight from here. You don't have to, press anything like you do on a desktop. You could just move this and adjust the size of this really easily right once you add it to your clip. Whereas like on a computer, you're going to have to tap, you're going to have to press Command T and then resize it that way. So again, it's really easy to move things and resize things here on the iPad. That's one big advantage that I see over desktop so far. And then also the last thing in effects over here is soundtrack. So you get some built-in music, which is actually nice. Like there's a lot of good music on here, which is obviously going to be copyright free. So you get things like driving, chill, epic, magical. So it breaks it down by the feeling that you get, or the type of theme of music that you want to use. So mysterious, if we add in a mysterious one, again, you will have to download these, but if we have this right here, you can preview it, and then we can add it to our clip right here. It's going to be at the bottom, and we can adjust that with the volume. Again, just press on volume down at the bottom and select the clip, and that's how you can adjust the volume for that clip. And something else I want to show you as well is this little pencil icon up in the top middle of the timeline. If you tap on that, you will see live drawing, and this is why I think it's essential to have an Apple Pencil with Final Cut Pro on the iPad if you're into editing at all, because this feature is really cool. It allows you to basically write on the video and it will be an animation in the video. So for example, let me just write something real quick. So it looks like I'm scared, so I just wrote just like that. So now we're gonna tap on done, and it will show up right here on our timeline as live drawing. Now I'm gonna move this a little bit over top of the part where it starts. So I'm gonna drag this over here, and now let's shorten this actually. Let's shorten this quite a bit. So I'm gonna go right here, and we're going to Command B on this, and we're going to delete that part of it. That way it's just a really short and you can see that when I play right here, you can see the animation of that happening. So I'm going to shorten this a little bit more actually, because it doesn't really match with everything else. So we're going to go ahead here, and you can see it's pretty cool. Like it's just a live animation, and I can see this being used in much better ways. This wasn't really the best example of that, but it's pretty cool. And if you tap and hold on this, you can also delete it, copy it, cut it, or render that selection. Now, something I want to do that I think can be really useful for having the Apple Pencil is highlighting something on a web page. So we're going to go out of here and go into Safari, and let's maybe take a screenshot of something and highlight some text. And now I want to highlight on here. So we're going to go to the pencil up in the top right and tap on that. And now I want to highlight something that I'm, talking about to draw more attention to it, to really emphasize it. So if I wanted somebody to buy like the iPhone 14 out of all of these, and I'm talking about it in the video, let's select the highlight tool right here, and I'm going to highlight iPhone 14. And then I also want to emphasize the 6.7 inch or 6.1 inch display size. So we're going to highlight that as well. And then also the price tag of $7.99. So that one doesn't look great, but you can kind of get the point. So let's tap on done. And now that is right there. Let's go ahead and get out of the inspector tool so you can see the window. And we're going to crop this to just be with this screenshot here. So we're going to press this, and there we go. So now when I'm talking about the subject, we're going to play, and you can see it's going to be highlighted. So let me mute this volume real quick. Let's mute that. And now let's play, and you can see it highlights it just like so. So that's awesome. I think that's a really great use case for using the Apple Pencil and that new feature. And then to the left of that, we have a video camera, and this is going to be the Pro video mode. So if you want to take videos, like in a professional way, so you can adjust basically everything here. So you can see we have our white balance. You can change that from auto to a certain white balance. You have your exposure, you have your flash, and you also have slow-mo, you have video, you can do autofocus or manual focus as well. So you can manually focus. You just get a lot of really cool, pro camera controls. Like you actually have manual controls, unlike in the default camera application. You also have these settings down here in the bottom left where you can change certain settings, and you can change the tools, the audio, all of that. Final Cut Pro just had its first crash on the iPad. Hopefully that's the last crash that we see. But anyways, let's go ahead and change our volume here. That way we know where to, kind of blade this clip here and know where to start on it. So we're going to select, I'm going to actually use my jog wheel to get real specific here for this. So we're going to go right there. And now let's deselect volume. So we have our controls again in the bottom right. And we're going to select this. That way it deletes everything before that. So we also have our music still intact down here. And at the beginning of the video, you're probably going to want to have your title. So maybe not the very beginning, but a couple of seconds in, we're going to have this title right here. So we're going to tap on the headline text, and we're going to change that to say, all right, so iPhone XR review, but I don't like that text. So we're going to choose a different text. Let's just do an Arial text. This is a very simple one. You can see you do also have other options. So if you tap on the little arrow right here, you have others. Like if you want to do Arial bold, we can do that as well. So that may look a little bit better. And I want to add a blur to this as well. So let's go back up to our effects right here. Let's just do a Gaussian blur. So we're going to add the Gaussian blur on top of that. That way the iPhone XR stands out a little bit more. And there we go. That's fine for now. Nothing too crazy, nothing super professional, but that'll do. And by the way, if you want to get more precise, you can tap on these little two dots right here and resize. Like if you want your timeline to be bigger and your preview to be smaller, you can do that. You just have to make sure it's on these little two lines above where it shows your timeline and the length of your project. All right, so we have some B-roll. We have this little highlight right here. We have our title. We have our little play button right here, which we can use as maybe like a, maybe like an outro or a call to action to subscribe. And if you tap on that, you can always move that around freely. Like it's a free transform tool just from tapping on it when it's on the screen. Oh, and by the way, with the project media up here, if you tap on these little squares, that will show you the aspect ratio of the clips. So if you have something that's a different aspect ratio, you will be able to see it right there along with maybe the names. If you wanted to have the clip names, you could do that as well, along with the time of those specific clips. So I had that pre-selected from earlier, but I wanted to mention if you're seeing that on my screen and not yours, it's because I have aspect ratio turned on. That way it shows the different aspect ratios for my clips. So we're using my jog wheel to see when this clip ends. So it looks like it ends around right here. There we go, delete. And we can delete that as well. So now our clip is finalized. Now we're going to export this by tapping on to the right, the button to the right of the pencil. So let's do export, and you can do video, audio only, current frame, or Final Cut Pro for iPad projects. You can, export this or edit this on your desktop version. But for now, we're going to export the video. And from here, you have presets. You also have your video codec, your resolution, your file type, and your color space. So everything looks good to me. We're going to export, and this will export to your camera roll. Now, I do want to briefly recap the downsides of Final Cut Pro for the iPad. Like there's a lot to love, but there are definitely some downsides. So the first thing is that there's no ability to go back and forth from iPad to Mac. Like if you wanted to take this project, for example, and edit it on your Mac, maybe add some things on your Mac and then send it back to your iPad to finish editing, you can't do that. Also, there's no external hard drive or SSD support for projects. Yes, you can import clips from your external drive, but you can't actually edit off of a drive. Like your project cannot be on the drive. Also, I've not found any type of stabilization. So if you use, something that doesn't have a stabilizer built in, I haven't found any way to stabilize clips on the mobile version of Final Cut Pro. And then also, I do wish you could blade easier with the pencil. Like I wish, and maybe this will come in future versions, but there should be shortcuts with the Apple Pencil where you can blade and delete things really easily without needing to press another button or something on your keyboard. But so far, I have to say that I really love Final Cut Pro on the iPad. I think it is much better than I expected. I really just expected like an iMovie Pro, but I found that Final Cut Pro on the iPad has a lot more features and it goes much deeper, gets much more complex than I expected. I also, again, I said this multiple times, but I love how you can easily move anything that's on the screen with, your Apple Pencil or with your finger. It's just much easier and more intuitive than it is on the desktop version. And I think for me, the only way I'm going to be able to actually edit fully on the iPad is if we have motion VFX effects on the iPad version, which is not available yet, but Apple did mention that third-party effects and, titles and generators are coming at a later date. So that'll be, when I revisit the Final Cut Pro on the iPad in terms of actually thinking I can use it full time. But for now, I rely too heavily on third-party, titles and generators and things like that to be able to use Final Cut Pro on my iPad full time. But, if you're a creator who doesn't need super advanced and sophisticated titles and, different generators and effects, then I think Final Cut Pro on the iPad is a big step up from iMovie. And it is definitely worth the $5 a month or $50 a year if you're using this to produce content for YouTube, for TikTok, for really anything. I think it is an excellent solution. So if you want to see more videos about Final Cut Pro on the iPad, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I will be doing more in the future, along with a lot of iPhone related videos as well. But anyways, guys, again, hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon.